Welcome to the July monthly market report. We've got an action-packed few minutes ahead. We're going to talk about a couple of things that I think are critically important right now as we, make our way into the second half of the year. So here's what I'm going to cover on July's monthly market report. First, what are forecasts for the second half of the year? We're going to give you everything on prices, on the number of homes sold, on mortgage rates, everything that you need to know to guide your clients forward confidently. The question that keeps coming up in the second half of the year is, how will the election affect the real estate market? We've got some phenomenal information that our KCM research team has gone out and gotten for you so that you can answer the questions that your clients are asking. And third, we will sort of break down the mindset of the consumer in the NAR settlement. I think that's going to be certainly top of mind as we go into the second half of the year for everyone. So we'll cover that and give you all of that information. We always think about doing the monthly market report so that you can be the most educated professional in your market on these topics. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so I just mentioned what's ahead for the second half of the year, housing market forecast for the second half of 2024. And I'm going to start out right here with what Lawrence Yun says. He said, home sales have lingered at 30-year lows, and since 70 million more Americans live in the country now than compared to 3 decades ago, it's inevitable that sales will rise in coming years. Inventory will grow steadily from more home construction, and various life-changing events will require more people to trade up, trade down, or move to another location. So maybe you've seen the articles that have been written and the number of homes that coming out in the existing home sales report comparatively to several decades ago. There was a Fast Company article that Lance Lambert wrote. There have been other people, obviously Lawrence Yun's talking about it here. But no doubt the rise in prices, the rise in mortgage rates has slowed down this market. And, really a lot of people saying, okay, what's the second half going to look like? The first half didn't sort of produce what we thought it would in this year. And will we see any relief on that? I want to start off with home sales and then go into price forecast and give you a couple of things I think that are really, really good. Now, here's my coaching to you as we start off this monthly market report. Take these slides from the monthly market report, get in the habit and put them on your phone, put them on your iPad, put them on something that you have with you so that you can have those ready when people have questions or you want to talk to somebody about it. But the 2024 total home sales forecast, average of here, Fannie, MBA, NAR, about 4.9 million total home sales this year. That's a combination of new home sales, existing home sales. And so knocking on the door right there of 5 million homes sold in this country this year. That's what we started off the year talking about. Kind of current consensus 4.1, 4.2. We'll see how the year goes. And existing home sales, the balance of that being new home sales, somewhere 700, maybe 800,000 homes, new homes sold in this country. That's what makes up that number. I don't think there are a lot of people that are outside of our business that maybe care about how many homes get sold in this country this year, but we certainly do in the business. And again, we're sitting here at the midpoint of the year here in July, kind of looking ahead saying, okay, what will the second half look like? Lawrence Yun, I'll go back to him. The market is in an interesting point with rising inventory and lower demand. Supply and demand movements suggest easing home price appreciation in coming months. Inevitably, more inventory and a job-creating economy will lead to greater home buying, especially when mortgage rates descend. So, a couple of things here. There's a lot of talk right now about the market and where it's at and what's going to happen with home prices. I'll give you the latest forecast for prices, but one thing is for sure, inventory is rising. It's due to the affordability constraints, really, that people feel, but prices are not, dipping. They've maybe fallen into a much more normal path, and maybe on the upper end, or maybe some markets, if you're listening and you're in a market that's seeing a little bit more, stagnant or plateaued pricing, that may be true. But if you look at nationally, what's being forecasted for this year, the average of these forecasters right here, 2.8%. I think somewhere between 3 and 5% is what we'll ultimately see. But you see the sort of the lion's share between 4 and 5% here in Fannie and Home Price Expectation Survey and MBA and Goldman Sachs, all those. But no doubt we're seeing a much more normal price appreciation, not the unhealthy price appreciation that we saw a couple of years ago. Jessica over at NAR says this: one thing that seems to be pretty solid is that home prices are going to continue to go up. And the reason is that we don't have any housing inventory. I started off this monthly market report saying, hey, go ahead, put these slides on your phone. Here's probably the most important one that I would say to have on my phone if I were you. It would be this right here. It's looking all the way back to the late 90s, the months of inventory on the market, number of homes for sale. And what do you see? Back in the mid early 2000s, 2008 specifically, this oversupply of homes on the market, to where now we've been in the seller's market undersupplied for many, many years, which again keeps pressure on prices. That's why you're not seeing prices fall right now. This is probably one of the ones that when you show people, they sort of have this aha moment and they go, okay, I get it. I understand what you're saying now, and I see why prices have risen. I think a lot of the price conversation, a lot of the volume in our business is going to be driven by what happens in the economy, specifically what happens in mortgage rates. We've got the latest projections for you, and then I think I'll get into what's the expectation of the Fed, because a lot of this will follow the path that they create. None of us, certainly listening to the monthly market report today, can control mortgage rates, but it is something that we want to be well aware of. But this is the latest look as of June, going through the third quarter of this year through the second quarter of next year, and sort of trying to get down to that 6.5% on a 30-year fix sometime by the end of the fourth quarter, beginning of the first quarter there. That's what I think we'd all like to see, is a little bit of relief in mortgage rates. But you see the path here, getting maybe below 6.5% by the midpoint of next year. Now, the one thing that is always true, if you try to predict and forecast mortgage rates, you will be wrong. And we certainly have not seen the path this year that we expected this year in 2024 with mortgage rates. We thought the Fed would come out and cut rates, and they didn't do it. And all of that we know by now. But if you look at this path, this is sort of the projection from MBA, kind of 2024, 2025, being in this downward trending environment in mortgage rates. And I think that's what we want to, sort of take a look at and say, okay, what do we think there, so that we can give the best advice to the clients we serve. If this proves true and we see relief in mortgage rates in the second half of the year, it's certainly going to become more affordable for people to buy homes. And we want to see that happen. We want to see affordability improve. We want to see more people have access to home ownership as the months go on. I think a lot of this is going to depend upon the path the Fed takes with rates. They don't have control over the mortgage rate, but them lowering the Fed funds rate will be an indication that we're starting to get through some of the issues we have faced in this country relative to high inflation and the things that the Fed has tried to control by raising rates. But the question is, when will they? The last meeting, as I record this, their sort of consensus, or the consensus coming out of that, is there could be one rate cut this year, and when that will be, we don't know. But we can tell you this, that the odds on from banks here, if you see, is sometime in the fall, in September specifically. We'll continue to watch that. I will tell you that the odds of a cut in September are coming down. And we're entering into a volatile election season. There's always the question, is the Fed acting to try to influence one particular candidate or another? They try to do something to help the incumbent. They're in almost like a no-win situation right now. And so I think us staying on top of this, watching it, is going to be key to giving good advice here in the second half. I'll say this. There's a great quote here that we have from a professor at City University of New York, economics professor, and he gives sort of an outlook I think is good for this market and going ahead in the second half of this year and into 2025 and really the next 5 years. He says, when it comes to the real estate forecast for the next 5 years, I'm cautiously optimistic. I believe we're going to see a lot of ebb and flow over the next 5 years, some highs, some lows, but overall a healthy market. Prices should continue to rise. though more slowly. Buyers might enjoy more options as inventory expands. But remember, real estate is profoundly local. What happens on a national scale can manifest differently in your backyard. I don't think I could have said it better than Dennis said there. Overall, a healthy market. Prices should continue to rise, though more slowly, and we should be thankful for that. We were in an unhealthy market. Buyers will enjoy more options as inventory expands, and that's what we want, right? We don't want prices to rise at the pace they were. We want buyers to be able to find the home that they like, but we want to see this market continue on, and it feels sort of we feel like we're waiting with bated breath right now to see what's going to happen. One of the areas that we are certainly waiting is how the election will affect this real estate market. This is a question that comes up in every election cycle. Our KCM research team, got to give a shout out to them, to Jamie, to Alex, to Kate, everyone working to pull this information, because they've gone back and looked at prior election years and said, okay, how does that affect the market? How does that affect real estate? Now, I will tell you this. There's not a tremendous effect on real estate in presidential years, but it's a question that many people ask. And maybe it's a question that they're thinking about, but they never ask you. There's a great area to create some content. Certainly as KCM, we will be creating content to share on this topic so that people go, okay, I understand sort of what happens in an election year and what happens relative to real estate, certainly where we're going to stay. But Al Lord, CEO of Lexard Capital Management, said this: presidential elections or election years affect the national housing market and mortgage rates through three interrelated channels. These are important: uncertainty, policy expectations, and consumer confidence. Now, I'll come back to these in just a minute. He said this is because consumers may choose to postpone a major purchase or sales until they gain greater confidence in the country's direction. So let's talk about that for just a minute. Three channels or three ideas around what people think during a time like this. Uncertainty. That is just purely, I don't know what's going to happen, right? I don't know who's going to win. I have concerns about that. I have whatever. Is my person going to win? Are they not? I'm uncertain about the future. Second, policy expectations. If the person that I voted for or that I align most closely with gets elected, then I feel more optimistic that maybe the country or policy is heading in the right direction. And that ultimately influences my consumer confidence. If I feel like the country's heading in the right direction, if I feel confident that I'm going to have a job, that I'm going to go out and buy a home, I'm going to go out and spend money. Our economy is driven on that idea of consumer confidence. So uncertainty, what that means to policy, and ultimately what that means for my pocketbook and my consumer confidence going forward. And he goes on to say, consumers may choose to postpone major purchases. I want to talk about that. I'm going to show you here in just a minute. What essentially happens is consumers sort of put their hands in their pockets in October and November, and they say, I'm going to wait and see. I'm going to wait and see what happens. And then I'll make a decision. I'll move forward or whatever. We don't lose those sales. They might just get pushed out a little bit. Something key to remember. But the reality is if you look at election cycles, there's always something going on. Back in 2008, there was a little bit going on in our business. Global financial crisis and recession, housing crisis. 2012, fiscal cliff, healthcare expansion review by the Supreme Court. Right? Is this going to last? Is that going to be a thing? A European debt crisis. 2016 was Brexit. 2020 was the pandemic, and right now, 2024, we deal with high inflation and a war. And so there are these issues that are at play, and there's certainly issues that people have opinions on, and they dictate who not only will be elected, but also policy direction in that. What's one of the big issues we know and certainly care deeply about, and that's housing. I expect that to be talked about more and more as we go forward. Ali Wolf said this: usually home sales are unchanged compared to a non-election year, with the exception being in November. In an election year, November is slower than normal. Now, that's what I was talking about just a few minutes ago, where I said people sort of, put their hands in their pocket and they say, I'll wait and see. Here's the information on that. The seasonal drop in sales a little bit sharper in presidential election years. Let's look at the drop in sales from October to November. On the left side, the gray bar in a normal non-election year, sales drop 9.8%. Let's call that 10% month over month. In an election year, that drop is 15%, a little bit more pronounced, right? And think about that. People kind of go, okay, let's hold on, let's wait and see, let's see what's going to happen, and then we'll make our decision. Again, don't lose that sale. Maybe it gets pushed out just a little bit. Now, here's where it gets interesting. I think these are interesting things. I'll give you my perspective on it, but I want to give you the factual basis of what happens to home sales, and we'll get into prices and a couple other things. But home sales went up after 9 of the last 11 presidential elections. So this looks at existing home sales, the year of an election on the left side, the year after on the right side. 9 of the last 11 times, sales went up the year following. 2 exceptions there in 1980 into 81, 1988 into 89, but every other year sales went up. We sold more homes the year after the election than we did the year of the election. Now, I think if you look at some of the surveys, basically flat year over year, I think we will see more home sales next year. Certainly hope that we do in that. But you can say typically what happens in election years, we sell more years. The year following, I'll tell you another interesting fact. Usually in a 4-year election cycle, the first year is the best year for real estate. That is a good thing. Ryan Lundquist said this: an election year doesn't alter the price trend that is already happening in the market, right? We talked about how, prices have been over the last couple of years, maybe unhealthy, rising very, very quickly. And we've even sort of prayed that, home prices would slow down a little bit. And here's another interesting fact. Existing home prices went up in 7 of the last 8 elections that have been held. So you see the election year on the left, the year following on the right. The only exception to that, 2008, a little bit going on in real estate that year. The one exception there, typically home prices go up the year following an election. You can say that confidently. It's happened in 7 of the last of the 8 presidential elections. Same with new home prices. They went up 10 of the last presidential elections, the only exception there being 2008 to 2009. Again, I'm going to make the case that a little bit going on in real estate. It's funny, back in 2009, if you were building a new home, you couldn't go out and get a construction loan, but as new home inventory was on the market, so it makes sense that prices would come down in the middle of all that. Allie Wolf went on to say, in December following an election and in the following year, the sales that are lost during November are recovered. It isn't that consumers say, I'm nervous. It's never, and I never want to buy. They say, I'm nervous. Let's just wait and see how things play out. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I think folks are looking to say, hey, I just want to see how things are going to play out here in this election, and I'll wait and see how that works. The other area, this is another piece of research that our team did, and certainly I think can get the conspiracy theory folks out there. Mortgage rates have decreased leading up to 8 of the last presidential elections. So you see this is from July to November, going all the way back to 1980. 8 of the last times rates came down coming into the election. You see the 2 or 3 exceptions to that: 1980, 1992, and 2016. A small decrease in mortgage rates. My hope, certainly in the trajectory that we're on, is we'll see that this year. What do I think relative to all these pieces? I think we will sell more homes next year. I think new home prices will go up next year. I think we will see a little bit of relief in mortgage rates heading into the election. Bankrate said this: for most Americans, election results will have little direct effect on their income and therefore should not significantly impact their decision to buy or sell a home. I think that is very, very true. I think it's a question that many people ask and wonder about. How could this, sort of affect real estate? We want to be prepared to answer that. I think you can answer those questions with, here's typically what happens to sales, to prices, to mortgage rates, and give them the facts and then give them your opinion. You don't have to agree with mine. Certainly you don't have to do that, but start with the facts and then give them your relevant market opinion based upon those facts. All right. So we've covered the second half. We've covered election. I want to wrap up with the NAR settlement and really maybe say, hey, what does it take to get your mindset right? Maybe your mindset's right on it, but I want to give you a little bit of perspective. This comes a lot of it from several different sources, but a predominant source, 1000 Watt, in their survey of consumers and what they think about the NAR settlement, maybe encourage you in that. Now is the time to be the educator, to be out there with this information. And Tom Ferry said it this way: I'm 3 decades into this business. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. No different than when you look back over the history of all great businesses. Most of them started during recessions, depressions, or moments of change. This is not a recession or depression, but this is a moment of change. There is no doubt about that, right? Our business is going through change. The settlement and how we operate is going through change, a lot of change happening. And so I want to give you a little bit of perspective on that change. Start right here from Clever Real Estate. Have you ever negotiated the commission rate with a real estate agent? 70% of consumers said no. 17% said yes, I got a reduced commission. 13% said yes, no change in rate. So 70% saying, hey, I didn't negotiate anything on there. That's probably very typical and very normal in our business, but that just gives you a temperature of this. So what is the awareness of the NAR settlement with consumers? This is it right here. 63% said I'm not aware of it. 37% said yes, I've heard of it. So 2 out of 3, almost 2 out of 3 consumers say haven't heard of it. If you see the dark text there on the left, only 37% of respondents had heard of the settlement and the proposed changes to industry practices. On the right there, the dark text, that's 63 of them, 63% had not even heard of the settlement is remarkable. So I think thinking that everybody knows about this is just not accurate. 2 out of 3 don't know about it. Maybe they heard something, but they don't understand, and they don't have the sort of perspective that it's going to have the impact maybe that it could in our business. It's our time to educate them and say, okay, here's what actually happened. Here's what that means to you, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, whatever the case is, and the folks that you're talking to. Will the NAR settlement impact whether you will use a real estate agent to sell a home? No impact, 49%. Somewhat more likely 16, somewhat less likely 15, much more likely 11%, much less likely no impact. 1 out of 2 consumers say it doesn't even have an impact. And there's certainly wide swaths to say, I want to know more about this. It may have an impact, but maybe not much. Okay, so we want to stay close to that. Gary Keller said, we've gone from a speed market to a skills market. If you can make this transition and develop your skills, you're going to be just fine. Speed market to a skills market, that is critically important to understand. Which statement best represents your opinion about the issue in the trial and the trial outcome? 3% said real estate agents are being attacked wrongly and the trial verdict was wrong. 20% said the National Association of Realtors and big real estate companies are finally facing consequences for ripping off home buyers and sellers with excessive commissions. 74% said real estate agents who work with buyers will now have to negotiate how they're compensated directly with those buyer clients. And this makes sense to me. 3 out of 4 consumers said, that makes sense. Certainly makes sense right there. That's where I would focus my mindset on. Not that everybody's like, I don't have to hire a buyer's agent now. 3 out of 4 said, makes sense. Makes sense. Which one of these statements do you agree with more? Is it worth paying a real estate agent to help you buy a home because it's a big, complex purchase requiring expert guidance and a professional? 76%, again, 3 out of 4. 24% said it really isn't necessary. That was probably true before any of this started. 3 out of 4, the majority think it is critically important. If you were selling a house right now, which of the following statements would make more sense to you? 49%, you do not have to compensate the agent who represents a buyer, but you may want to because it motivates more agents to find a qualified buyer. key there. 50%, you should not offer compensation to the agent who represents the buyer because that agent should get paid directly by their own client. This will reduce the total commission you pay, but it may make it harder for some buyers to afford your home. Split really 50-50 on that. It's going to be interesting to see where that lands right now. But there's a great study from 1000 Watt. If you're not following 1000 Watt, I would encourage you to. They have great information on this topic. If you were hiring a real estate agent to help you buy a home right now, which of the following payment options would you be most likely to choose? This is interesting. 14% pay the agent an hourly rate of $100 per hour to complete the task I need them to perform. 20% set a flat fee of $10,000. 66% said I pay the fee equal to 2.5% of the purchase of the home that I purchased with no fee payable if I eventually decide not to buy. 2 out of 3 consumers say I'll pay a commission, 2.5% in this case. You can argue, is that fair? I'll leave that up to you and how you see that playing out in your business. But the overwhelming majority say, look, it makes sense to me. I would pay a commission, and that's what we have to stay focused on right now. I think there's so many distractions in our business. There's so many people talking about so many different things that that a lot of times paralyze people in getting out there. I'll wrap up with a quote here from Jimmy Burgess. Jimmy's CEO of Florida Beach Properties down in the Panhandle. He does such a good job of getting great information in agents' hands. He says this: so if your mindset is that this is the single greatest time to be alive because I have a ton of value to deliver, I love serving customers, and I'm a great problem solver, you're going to love this market. And certainly my hope is that is you, that you're going to love this market, that you are a problem solver, that you're going to be focused on serving customers, and you're going to make a difference in their lives. The monthly market report, we try to do it with the essence of the KCM founder, Steve Harney, who said this: most agents know what's happening. Good agents understand what's happening, and the great agents can explain what's happening. And my hope is that on the NAR settlement, you can explain that well. On the election, you can explain that well. And on the second half of the year, you can guide your clients forward well, giving them the best advice because you are prepared and you are ready. So we'll see you back next month. And as always, thank you for the support that you give us as you watch this monthly market report. Take care.